I don't know how much additional work I'll do on this. It kind of depends on your feedback. If people tell me, like tell me what's working, what's not working, I'm happy to make changes based on feedback. If no one tells me anything, I'll just do what feels good to me. So do what feels fun to me. And this semester, what it feels like will be fun for me is actually playing with NotebookLM. This is something I started doing for a couple different reasons. One, I guess, with the Physics 10, some of the lecture videos, new ones that I'm recording, I'm doing it with the NotebookLM. There are some features in Studio that I thought would be great. So I'm using that. And I guess here, how you might use it, I don't know. I haven't given it a lot of thought. So my first, you have my invitation to just poke around. Let me actually change my account so that you can see what it looks like for someone who doesn't own this notebook. So I'm gonna go in. Let me do this. I'm gonna open my other. Oops. I'm gonna do this cleanup of screen. And what I'm doing here is I'm gonna copy this link and paste into this my other profile that's not logged into well, it is also logged in, but let me switch it to another account that's not the owner of this. Yeah, so this is what it'll look like if you access this notebook LM and you are not the owner. But I basically gave as much access as I could. And I think that means you have access to all the sources. I don't know if you can download it, but you have access to all the sources. The main thing that's not publicly available are the lecture transcripts. It is publicly available, I guess, on the as part of the videos, the YouTube videos, but it's not available in this organized fashion. This is I don't have any objection to having people having access to it. It's just that it's more of a 100,000 page utility for me. It's not like many of you will be reading through transcript. So, but I think because it has access to the transcript, you could potentially ask this question. Let me give this a try. So I will ask this. So imagine I was still answering this, and imagine you are not me, so you don't know answers to all the questions already. And you are not just guessing randomly, you are trying to answer. So like this question. So you could just select the lecture transcript. Or if you want to be even more focused, you might nail down to week 1, but let me just do the entire transcript, and you can chat about these sources. I'm trying to answer the question, can you help me? And it'll probably reference the source and tell me some version of this, I think. Let's give it a try. Again, if we are abusing this to bypass the learning, doesn't help you. If this is somehow relieving some points of frustration, then great. By all means, use it. According to lecture transcripts, visual process, visual alignment. You place the tail of the second vector, or align the head of the first vector with the tail of the second vector. Yeah, that's this description, and yeah, that's it. But again, I think my warning earlier was these are not the best questions. So if you only know what's covered in the questions, you don't really know much. So, like if you have to go to NotebookLM for help with this, that might be an indicator that you should really go back and rewatch the video. So just be mindful of that. And in the studio, there aren't that many resources here, mainly because for this class, I'm not using this to put together your lecture videos. There are some ones that I've just generated because it's easy thing for me to click. I do think the mind maps will be probably useful. So, play with the mind maps. So like week 1 material, that's this mind map. I have a notebook mind maps that kind of tells you which ones are these. I can't rename the mind maps, so if you want kind of overview of what's covered in week 1, okay, go to this. This is the mind map that's generated on the 2 sources, which is I think the textbook chapter and the lecture transcripts. That's just for this week. And here you can kind of look, okay, the foundational concepts, and so if you want to, this might be a quick way to skim, almost like Cliff Notes back in the days. I don't know what the brand name is these days. And if any of these descriptions, like polar coordinate, like makes 0 sense to you, then you can do a couple different things. You could click on it. That'll actually generate a chat item here, and NotebookLM will tell you some summary of what it has from the sources. What I don't know is if it's gonna use only the 2 sources that the mind map is based on, or if it'll try to go to all the sources. Let me just check. Yeah, I don't know which sources it'll be using. It ideally should really be using these 2 sources. I don't know if it will automatically have limited itself down to, yeah, so you might have to modify the sources manually yourself. Can you tell me which source this response was based on? I don't know if you can tell me that. Yeah, I think these are all just the lecture transcripts. So it looks like when you use mind map as a starting place for the chat, it doesn't automatically adjust the sources. So you'd have to adjust the source manually yourself. So if you are using, let me see if I tell you this. In the note on mind maps, so for week 1 material, yeah, so chapters 1 and 2 of the textbook and lecture 1. Yeah, so I think this is enough for description for someone to figure out, go back to the sources. The source I'm talking about are this week 1 and this week 1. So you'll have to adjust these manually yourself. And then which source? I think it's lying, because here it wasn't, and in between those 2 response, so it's dynamically changing what source was based on. But now that I've changed the sources, if I go back to the mind map and redo some of this, then it'll probably now use the correct source. Like if I go to conservation law and this work energy theorem, which we are not actually covering, it's based on the table of content in the textbook. Then if it's using the correct 2 sources, it'll just say it's from the table of content, I think. We'll see. It's a little bit it doesn't work as well with the week 1 material because it's not the typical material we cover. But I'll continue to do this demo throughout the semester, and I think it'll work a lot better with like week 2, week 3 material, I think. Present as fundamental concept, and I think it's using what source is it using? Scalar nature, context of conservation laws. Yeah, lecture outline shows. Yeah. So it's gonna talk about the yeah. So yeah, so that's one way to, and this is I guess my invitation to you, and I'm going to be posting a ungraded discussion early next week. I was thinking about if I might post it tomorrow, but I think it's gonna confuse people, so I'll hold off until Monday to post it. The ungraded discussion is basically a way to get your feedback on what materials you might like here. So for week 1, I think I just have the mind map. I don't think any of these are. I need to rename these for weeks, I think. I'll give them like rename this like week 2, week 3, and so on. So in the ungraded discussion, I'll give you a screenshot of what kind of assets I can generate, and if people tell me they would like to see this or that, then okay, tell me and I'll generate those, and whatever is helpful, I'm happy to give it a try. some of these slides, I don't know. They are never the way I would have presented it, but you know, it's something. With the Physics 10, I'm finding the infographic feature actually more useful because I can have that image and use that as something to lecture over as I'm writing on the screen and all that. But you know, for this class, the 30 lectures that's been put together, I did it before all these features in Notebook LM was available and before I was aware of any of this. For this class, these are all just enrichment materials. If there are things here that, so again, as you look at the ungraded discussion that you will see next to it, if there are some of these that you think might be interesting to look at, just let me know. It might help if you tell me what kind of prompt that I should use, but then tell me and I will generate it and it'll be available here. I might do one thing. I can do an audio. In fact, let me do it right now. So let me do an audio overview that's basically based on the entirety of the thing. So that's the entirety of the transcript and the entirety of the textbook. That's like audio overview for the whole thing. Let me see if I think I had to put it as a default. There's a feature where you can make it interactive, like it's a radio talk show that you call in. So hey, if you want to give it a try, give it a try. It won't generate within this session, but again, it's more of a reminder for that ungraded discussion where I'll ask you, what kind of media assets do you want me to generate? That might be helpful to you, and I'll do that. And once it's generated, you will have access to it through this view. The way you've seen me do it through my personal account here. So, okay, I think that's all the time we have, and I think I did cover everything. I didn't quite spend the majority of time on this. I guess I'll. This will be an evergreen agenda item for this semester. I'll probably do something with the Notebook LM at each session, if not majority of time, then at least 5-10 minutes. And tell me if there's any requests, anything you want to see me doing. I think if there are any questions, people who are here in real time want to ask on recording, then let me say goodbye to people joining by recorded video, by which I mean I'm gonna stop the recording, and then I'll stay online briefly in case people who are here in real time had some questions they wanted to ask but didn't want to ask on recording. So let me stop the recording here. Again, saying goodbye to people joining by recorded video.